Hello, everybody. For today's video, I want to talk about the best and worst character adaptations in Austen by a partial, prejudiced, and ignorant historian. Basically, meaning that I want to talk about ranking, or really just choosing my favorite and least favorite, in some cases, characterizations or adaptation choices of throughout Austen. This will be heavily focused on Pride and Prejudice because those are the most adaptations that I've seen, and I have the most opinions about those various adaptations. But it's with throughout all the different Austen main six novels that I've seen various adaptations to. Just to set some expectations here, this is all my opinion, right? I am partial and prejudiced, as I have said. I have favorites, and I tend to like the characterizations that were in my favorites. So you might see certain adaptations getting a lot of play here. Not going to apologize. I have opinions. That's it. That's what this is. I also am going to let you know that I'm not doing every character. These are kind of random characters based on which ones I personally have a strong opinion about. If there is a character that I don't have a strong visceral opinion of which one is the best, I'm just not talking about them here. So that doesn't mean I don't like that character or that that character is not important. It just means that I, for the purposes of this video, don't have a strong opinion on a specific adaptation doing it correctly or really badly. And I would also like to throw out here that this is not necessarily talking about the acting abilities of the actors I'm choosing here and the specific adaptations that I am choosing here. Because I'm not saying that they're a bad actor necessarily. I'm saying that I'm not either really like or that they're a very good actor. I'm saying that I like the adaptation choice being done here, or I dislike the adaptation choice being done here, as opposed to specifically talking about them being. So when I'm ranking them the worst or the best, I am not saying that they are the best actor or the worst actor of all of these options. I'm saying that I like the adaptation choices that were made with this particular actor and this particular adaptation the best. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, let us get on with the show. So, first one I want to talk about is obviously Pride and Prejudice. It'll be heavily dominated here as it has the most adaptations that I have seen for Pride and Prejudice. Here, the pictures I've got on screen are the versions that I will be sort of talking about here. They are not the only versions that I have seen. I have seen a number of other versions of Pride and Prejudice, but for the purposes of this video, the ones that stood out to me that deserved either a best or a worst come from these options. So I've got the 1940 Pride and Prejudice, I've got the 1995 miniseries, I've got the 2005 movie, I've got Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It's the prize hit here. I've got the Pride and Prejudice, a new musical. And I've got the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, all represented in characters that are either the best or the worst. So first off, we got Mr. Darcy. And he obviously has to be Colin Firth from the 1995 miniseries. That is my Darcy. He is and will forever be Mr. Darcy. I will take no opinions on this. It is just that Colin Firth is my favorite Darcy by far. I'm not saying that the other Darcys are not good, obviously, but Colin Firth is my Darcy, and that just is how it is. Next up, we got Mr. Bingley, also coming in from the 1995 miniseries, Crispin Bonham Carter. I think he's a great Bingley. And I specifically like this version of Bingley over some of the others in a way that I don't think I had for Mr. Darcy. Um, Specifically, I'm thinking the 2005 version of Mr. Bingley comes off as kind of not that bright. I guess. And I don't think Bingley's stupid, and he's also not shy or like socially awkward, which they kind of made him socially awkward in the 2005 version, which I do not approve of. So I like this version of Bingley better. This is the great Bingley. I love him. That's all there is to it. I also just love the 1995 miniseries, if I haven't made that clear already. All right, next, another one for the 1995 miniseries, but I love this Caroline Bingley, Anna Chancellor. Um, from the 1995 miniseries as Caroline Bingley is just perfect. I love her. She's got that supercilious face down pat. She does a perfect job, in my opinion, of doing all the scenes. She is my Caroline Bingley, and I love her. I mean, I don't love Caroline Bingley, but I love her as Caroline Bingley. She does a great job. Now, the reason that Pride and Prejudice and Zombies made the list was because of Mr. Collins. And my absolute favorite version of Mr. Collins ever in an adaptation is the version from Pride and Prejudice and Zombies that Matt Smith does. This starts off a common theme that you may see through this list that I tend to like the Pride or the Doctor Who actors in Jane Austen. But I just think Matt Smith as Mr. Collins is amazing, and I love him so much. And most other adaptations, I cannot stand Mr. Collins, which I think it kind of makes sense. You're not really supposed to love Mr. Collins. But Matt Smith's version of Mr. Collins is still hateable and still awful, but I love him, and I don't know why. It's just amazing. Just his quirky, like over the top, almost being his character from Doctor Who, but as Mr. Collins is perfect, and I love it so much. And I don't really love Pride and Prejudice and Zombies in other ways, although there are some fun moments, but Mr. Collins is a standout in that movie, and I love Matt Smith's interpretation of Mr. Collins. So this is the, I think, only character that's coming out of this movie, but he makes the list and he's amazing. Love Matt Smith, love him as Mr. Collins. Then we have Charlotte Lucas and their first time on the board for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which I love the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. It's a great YouTube series. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should. And their take on Charlotte Lucas is that she's Charlotte Lou, and the this adaptation actually brings in a lot more for Charlotte than she has in the original source material or in any other adaptation that I've seen. Really builds her up as a stronger, bigger character. And I love the arc they give her. I love that she has more agency and is a more present character throughout as Lizzie's best friend here than she does. And that is a change from the original novel, but in this version, I like it. And I really enjoy what they did with Charlotte Lucas. So I'm giving her Julia Cho from Charlotte from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, my favorite as the best Charlotte Lucas. Next up, we've got Jane, Jane Bennett. Gotta love Jane, and I'm going back to my 1995 miniseries. I love this Jane, Susanna Harker. She's a great Jane. I love her so much. She's the best. No notes. She's perfect. And of course, I also have to give it to Jennifer Ehle from the 1995 miniseries. Yet again, she is my Lizzie Bennet. She is the best. I love her so much. She is perfect. Once again, I love the 1995 miniseries, but this version of Elizabeth is really the version that matches with my head of what Elizabeth is and how she would be in the world. I love her so much. It's amazing, 10 out of 10. She's my favorite Elizabeth. Next up, I think a little dark horse of it is at all. The I said 1930 movie on the screen here. That is wrong. It is the 1940 movie. Um, Mary, played by Marsha Hunt. And this movie from 1940 is a little odd. It's set in a different time period than every other adaptation. It's set kind of in, it still says it's in London, but it looks like it's trying to be in like the South because it's got all the costumes from Gone with the Wind. It's very strange. Um, but it's really good. It's not a faithful adaptation by any means, but it's fun. It's very quick and flirty and fast. But I really love the Mary from this. They have her playing the flute, I want to say, and her singing and just the her smile and the way that she doesn't seem to care her mother, Mrs. Bennet, is getting all crazy, and Mary just is serene and doesn't even really notice what's going on, and everything's fine. And I don't know, just this Mary stands out to me. I love this version of Mary from the 1940 movie. Then we get to Lydia Bennet. And again, we're going back to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Mary Kate Wiles plays Lydia in that version. And again, this adaptation changes Lydia from the original source material, gives her more agency, makes her into a more full-fledged, full human, and also sort of doesn't punish her for her mistake of trusting Wickham and really like gets her out of that situation, changes the ending for a more modern adaptation on that. And I really like the take they did of Lydia here. I think that it works really well, and I am stoked about this adaptation of Lydia. It is my favorite Lydia out there in the adaptations. And to go along with that, the best kitty as well, just because I love her. This is Rosie, who is the actress's, Mary Kate's actual cat at the time, I believe. Plays Kitty in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and I think that's funny that they've had a cat play Kitty. And I think it's perfect, and I love it, and so she wins Best Kitty as well. Because honestly, in most adaptations, Kitty doesn't have all that much to do. Neither does this. So they replaced her with a kitty. It's very cute. All right, and back to the 1995 miniseries. We've got Mrs. Bennet. Alison Steadman. She is over the top dramatic, and I love her. I've heard multiple people talk about not loving this adaptation or choice of Mrs. Bennet, saying that she's too much and she's shrill and annoying. And I don't know that they're wrong, but that's kind of the point. That's how Mrs. Bennet is. She is over the top and crazy and shrill and all of that. And this actress just is at 11 the entire time. And it's perfect. That's what Mrs. Bennet is supposed to be. I love this version of Mrs. Bennet. No notes. Um, for Mr. Bennet, I'm choosing the new musical version. I thought about this for a while because I think that the guy who plays him in the 1995 version does a good job. I don't love the version from the 2005 movie. I think that one's a little off, in my opinion. Just the choices that were made with that character. But it comes down to Mr. Bennett and the way he kind of talks to the audience and the sarcasm that goes in with this being a live theater production really works for me. I think that really works as Mr. Bennett being kind of the straight man while the audience laughs at whatever quippy line he just said. Um, and so this version of Mr. Bennett really just stands out for me as like working the best as a way to adapt this kind of character that is sort of so dry and um I don't know. I think that in some cases he can come off as adaptations either make him a little too sweet, which I don't think is correct or not my version of what I think Mr. Bennett is. That's the 2005 version. I think they tried to make him a little too sweet. I don't love that. Um, or they try to make him, or with how harsh he is, he comes off as too harsh, maybe. Whereas this one is allowing him to be harsh, but because it's a live theater production and he's kind of vamping for the audience and the audience is laughing what he's saying, it really works in my opinion. I really enjoyed this version of Mr. Bennett, and it gets a different adaptation onto the list. We've got Aunt and Uncle Gardner. I love them. I love the version of them from the 1995 miniseries. Um, they're great in this version. And I don't have a lot to pick from in the sense that in many adaptations they are very severely cut down if they're even there at all, because they do tend to be side characters that get cut. The miniseries has the time to really allow them to be there and to be themselves. And so it's not really a fair comparison. The 1995 didn't have a lot of competition, but still, they win as the best Antonin Gardner. And then we have Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And I'm going to go with the 2005 movie with Judi Dench. This might be just to try and put 2005 on the board because I've been kind of harsh and not picking them for anything. And I don't love that movie. If you've seen other videos on my channel, I have a whole thing about why. But I do think Judi Dench's performance is a standout. She does a really good job. That kind of almost highlights how not a good job some of the other people are doing, maybe. Um, except for the fact that they have her come in the middle of the night for some reason when she gives her big, has her big argument with Lizzie. She's great. And that's not her acting is still great in that scene. It just makes no sense to me that it's the middle of the night. Anyway, point being, she's fabulous. She does a great job. She is my favorite Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Then we have Colonel Fitzwilliam, and I'm going back to the Lizzie Bennet diaries. Um, he's called Fitz in that version. He's not a colonel, but he is another great version of this character that often gets cut way down in different adaptations. But in this version, again, with the timing, they're able to sort of give him more to do, similar to what I was saying about Charlotte Lucas, because it's a more modern context and they're able to sort of give him more leeway and more time. I think I like what they do to build out this really fun friend character for Mr. Darcy. And I like him. He's a great. So Fitz from Lizzie Bennet is my best or my favorite Colonel Fitzwilliam. And another one that comes from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I'm going to go Georgiana. She's Gigi in this version from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. She's amazing. Again, I really like that they are able to sort of pull her story out, give her more agency. It's a theme that they were doing with the Lizzie Bennet Diaries where Gigi, who was what they call Georgiana, is able to tell her own story about Wickham, is able to have more, try to get Lizzie and Darcy together. The whole thing, she just has more to do and more to say about things than she does even in the original source material. They're able to bring her out of being this kind of shy back character to somebody with agency who's actually doing things and a bigger part of the plot. And I really enjoy that. I think it's great. So I love Gigi from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. She's the best Georgiana. And now we have my first worst, which is Mr. Wickham. And I went this direction because I didn't think any of the Wickhams really stood out as amazing, in my opinion. The one from the 1995 is good, but I wasn't thinking, oh, yes, that's my favorite Wickham. And it could be just because he's the evil guy. But the one from 2005, I really dislike his performance as Wickham. And this is part of where I'm getting into, is it a I'm not calling him a bad actor per se, because I don't think that he was given really anything to work with. But this version, the 2005 movie version of Wickham, is given so little to work with. He is very uncharismatic. I don't get the feeling that Lizzie is under his spell at all, ever, because they don't have any time for that. I don't understand why Lydia ran away with him. He's just so gross the whole time. Gross might be the wrong word, but he just comes off as kind of creepy from the get-go. I never buy him as this nice, charismatic guy, and so it doesn't work for me. So this is my least favorite Wickham, is the one from the 2005 movie. And that wraps it up for Pride and Prejudice for now. We're moving on to persuasion characters. And here again are some of the different adaptations of persuasion that I have seen, though we're going to be leaning heavily into Rational Creatures and the 2022 movie as best and worst versions. So, starting with the best and the worst, I have the Anne from Rational Creatures, which is another YouTube video series that is amazing. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you go on YouTube and watch it right now. It is probably my favorite version of persuasion that has ever been done. But that version of Anne, I really connect to and like a lot. I think they did a great job of depicting a nice Anne. And then there is my least favorite version of Anne, which is Dakota Johnson from the 2022 version movie on Netflix. It's just awful. And it's really sad because, as you'll see as I go through the list, a lot of my favorite characters are from this version. I think this version, the 2022 Netflix version, could have been amazing. But the biggest failing in it is that I cannot stand this version of Anne. And that's not all Dakota Johnson's fault. Again, as the actor thing, it's the way she's written, the way they have her trying to be this weird, like Bridget Jones kind of character instead of Anne. Like this character is not Anne, has nothing to do with Anne, has never seen Anne, has never met Anne. I don't understand what they did that, but it is the absolute worst version of Anne. That character is not Anne. It's almost like they did a thought experiment of what we were of like what this movie would be if there was a completely different character as the main character. Very strange, but she does sort of ruin the movie for me because, she's the main character, and I think it's a really, really poorly done choice of how to adapt an Anne Elliot. Next up, we've got Mary, also from the 2022 movie. She's amazing. She's perfect. She is the best Mary ever. She is a huge standout in this movie. I love every scene she's in. She is perfect all the time. She is the quintessential Mary, and she's great. I love her to pieces. No notes. She's perfect. I also love the Sir Walter from the 2022 movie. Richard E. Grant is amazing. He is perfect as, oops, he is perfect as Sir Walter. Um, just over the top and crazy, which is what these characters are kind of supposed to be, in my opinion. So it works. When I'm talking about Mary and now Sir Walter, it works for them to be over the top and ridiculous. The way it doesn't work for Anne, because that's not who Anne is. Anne is supposed to be the straight man. Doesn't work. And again, going into Mr. Elliot. I love the 2022 Mr. Elliot. He does a great job. He's my favorite. He's a standout. I don't love all the complete choices because he kind of goes slimy a little too quickly. Meaning, like, he doesn't hide that he's got ulterior motives from Anne, which I don't get as an adaptation choice. But beyond that, I still think that this version of Mr. Elliot is amazing. He does a really good job with it. And yet again, Elizabeth, fabulous. I love the actress who plays Elizabeth here. She's over the top and crazy, just like her father, Sir Walter. It's amazing. It's perfect. She is the best. Elizabeth, I love her so much. Which is where you're getting my anger at the Anne, because I think a lot of the rest of this movie is so good, and then you got Anne who's so bad, and it just kind of ruins the whole thing for me. Then we have our Captain Wentworth, and I'm going back to Rational Creatures. I really love this version of Captain Wentworth. He's not a captain in this version. He's, just Fred, but he is, I think you're on his side a little bit from the beginning more because you're not completely in Anne's head the way you are in the novel and in most of the other adaptations. So it humanizes him a little bit more from the beginning. I love the representation that he's a bi man and he is, trying to work out his feelings on things. And I think it's a really well done characterization of Captain Wentworth. Again, I love Rational Creatures, but did a really good job. I love that one. And before I move on with Captain Wentworth, I just wanted to put in an honorable mention. I don't think I put this on my list, but the Lewis instead of Louisa and Ben instead of Bennick are also amazing standouts from this version, Rational Creatures. I should have put them on my list. Um, and they are the best. I love how they are more, again, because of the web series nature of it, they are brought out more, they are given more time. We see their love story grow in a way we don't in the book, where it's just kind of like, oh, and now they're getting married. In this version, they are more real three-dimensional characters who have a real like love story together, and I love them and they're perfect. And yeah, again, no notes. They are all wonderful. And they've got the fun little like sort of love triangle-y thing going on with Captain Wentworth when he is semi-dating Lewis. Anyway, it's great. I love it. All three of them are amazing. And then we've got another worst, also from the 2022 movie. Again, I really dislike this version of Lady Russell. I'm not sure exactly what it is, why. She just comes off as so sort of cold and stiff most of the time. And then she's making weird sex jokes about going off to the continent and having a lover. And it just is so kind of discordant in my mind. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. It might be that I hate Anne so much and the two of them sort of are friends and playing off each other. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, but I do not like this version of Lady Russell. It doesn't work for me. It's again a standout of in a bad way. Don't love it. She's This is my worst Lady Russell. And now we will be moving on to Northanger Abbey. So I've got three versions of Northanger Abbey that I am aware of. There are less adaptations, although I believe there is another web series that I did not put on here. But the three that I've got are the 2007 movie, the 1980s movie, and then the Kate Morland Chronicles, which is another YouTube version um that was done, and I love it. Again, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely go check out the Kate Morland Chronicles. I think it's a good time. So here we go. I'm going to start off with Catherine, who, or in this version, Kate from the Kate Morland Chronicles. She is my favorite Catherine. I love her so much. I think the modern bit of it, so the conceit here is that she's, a fangirl and she is really into all these different fandoms and she loves different things and she's very into it. Um, and I can strongly relate to her in that sense. And so I really relate to this Kate Morland more than I ever really have to Catherine from the novel, even though I love Northanger Abbey anyway, but this version of Kate or Catherine is my absolute favorite. I think she did an amazing job as Kate and showing off that enthusiasm even with the innocence. So, it's great. I love it. She's my favorite Catherine. Next up, we've got Isabella Thorpe, and my favorite is from the 2007 movies, Carey Mulligan. She is another Doctor Who actress who was in Doctor Who in a very pivotal role in a very important episode. Um, so I don't know if that's why I love her in this version, but in any case, I think she is a great Isabella Thorpe. I really love her performance of this character. And of course, have to give it to J.J. Field for being my favorite Henry Tilney. He's amazing in this role. He's perfect. I love Henry Tilney. Henry Tilney's probably one of my favorite Jane Austen heroes. And J.J. Field does a great job of showing that. And before we move away the from Northanger Abbey, I just want to put an honorable mention to all the actors in the 1980 version being the absolute worst possible version of all of their characters. They all are so overacted, and like this Henry Tilney is crazy. This Catherine is losing her mind. This Isabella Thorpe is just over the top and ridiculous. Like it's just so bad it's almost good again. It's a 1980s fever dream. I would recommend you watch it if you can find a copy because it is entertaining. It's not good, but it is entertaining. And so I had to put a throw out here that honorable mention that they are all the worst. I was starting to list out characters and it was getting too long because I was just listing every character as being the worst version in the 1980s version. So instead of saying that and listing every single character, I'm telling you all of them. Just everybody in the 1980 version. They're all the worst. Just need you to know that before we move on with our lives. So next up, we're going to talk about Emma. I love Emma. These are some of the versions of Emma, the two movies and the two mini series that I have seen. There's also a web series as well, maybe the same people who did Lizzie Bennet Diaries, but I never really was able to get into it. The Emma approved, so I haven't seen the whole thing. Come at me, let me know if there's a reason I should go back and try it again. I don't know, it just didn't work for me. So they're not in this list because I have not seen that whole version. So, my favorite version of Emma. I've got a best and a worst for Emma. I love the 2020 movie, and I love Anya Taylor-Joy's version of Emma. I think it's fabulous. So good. Love it. And the worst would be Gwyneth Paltrow. Again, my biases and prejudices come in because I'm not a huge fan of Gwyneth Paltrow, sorry. With all her goop stuff since then, like kind of, I don't know, flavors my version of her. But I just think she's coming off as sort of like insincere. She's trying to be sweet, but it comes off as not. I don't know. I just don't like how she comes off. Versus Anya Taylor-Joy is very like blunt and unlikable sometimes, but it feels real to me. the Emma in the 96 version is almost trying too hard or to hide it and make herself seem sweet when she's, I don't know, it's just something about the Gwyneth Paltrow Emma throws me off. I don't love it. So she is my least favorite Emma. Mr. Woodhouse, I'm going with Bill Nighy from the 2020 version. I love how he plays it so differently than most of the other adaptations I've seen, where they would look at Mr. Woodhouse as actually an invalid, whereas in this case, Mr. Woodhouse is not ill in any way. He just pretends he is or kind of thinks he is, maybe. And anyway, I think that that is a great way to play it, and I found it really funny, and I really like him. I also really like the Jane Fairfax from the 2020 movie. I'm giving her a special dispensation here because she plays the piano, and she actually plays the piano in that scene where she plays it in the movie, and I think she gets extra credit for that. And so that is one of the main reasons she gets to be my favorite Jane. I also just love the 2020 movie, but anyway, she's my favorite Jane. I also love Harriet from the 2020 movie. Mia Goth is perfect. Well, my one note is I wish she had eyebrows. I don't understand why she does not have eyebrows in this movie. But other than that, she's perfect, and I love her so much. And I love the adaptation choice they made in this version to make her and Emma be actual more real friends in a way that I don't think they are in other versions, or actually the way that I don't think they actually are in the book. This was a change from the original source material that I personally like, where they're having Harriet be more of a real, long-lasting friend to Emma. And I really like that they made that choice. And going along with that, I also love the Robert Martin from this movie, the 2020 movie. He's so sweet. I think Robert Martin in many of the adaptations can kind of just disappear into the background. This Robert Martin gets pulled out a little bit. Um, I think honestly, because in this version I care more about the Harriet situation and I care more about her final situation than even Jane Austen does in the book. But this Robert Martin is wonderful and I love him with his Harriet. And yeah, I love the 2020 movie and all these characters. I also really love the Mrs. Elton from this version. She's so good, and I had to pick this picture because I know that hair is anachronistic. It's not quite the correct time period for it, and I don't care because I love it. It's so ridiculous and perfect. I don't know, she looks like a bird. She's beautiful, but like it's just perfect. And I this Mrs. Elton is just so awful, and I love her. Perfect. Then we have also the Mr. Knightley. I'm also going giving it to the 2020 movie, Johnny Flynn. And again, honestly, the reason he wins, I'm going to be very clear about this. I was debating with other versions of Mr. Knightley. There was another really strong contender, but this version of Mr. Knightley actually plays the violin, and he plays a real old-fashioned violin in this movie, which is what this picture's from. And actors who can play instruments, apparently that is the thing that does it for me because that pushed him over the edge, and I was like, he can sing and he can play an instrument, and that means he's the best Mr. Knightley. I will take no notes. I also love the Miss Bates from this movie. Miranda Hart plays Miss Bates, and she's just perfect. I really love that this version of Miss Bates seems more emotional, maybe. I feel like so many of the other versions really do just play her for laughs and being ridiculous, and they do that in this version as well. But there's something about the way she plays Miss Bates that really gives it some extra heart, which makes sense because her last name's Hart. I don't know. But it really works for me. I love this version of Miss Bates. That was very one-sided. I feel like I picked everything from the 2020 movie. And I kind of did, but I love that movie and I love all those adaptation choices. So sue me. Anyway, moving on to Sense and Sensibility. These are the three options that I am moving from. We got the 90s movie, the classic, got the 2008 miniseries, which I also love, and then a new contender, the 2024 Hallmark movie version of Sense and Sensibility, that if you haven't seen, I think they did a really good job at with. It was way better than I expected it to be coming as a Hallmark movie, but I really enjoyed it. Take a look. So we're going to start off with a sort of spicy choice, I think. My favorite Eleanor is the one from the 2008 miniseries. I love her. She's great. Emma Thompson also is also a really good Eleanor. But I do think that there's something to be said for the miniseries, be having more time to really get into these characters, but I really love this version of Eleanor. So, sorry. And for Marianne, I'm giving it to the actress from the 2024 Hallmark movie. I really love her version of Marianne. She comes off as so likable, I guess. And I usually hate Marianne, so that's probably why I'm picking this particular version of Marianne. I don't know if that means it's a good adaptation because I hate her in the book too. I usually am a very strong Marianne hater, but in this version, in the 2024 Hallmark movie, I really like this version of Marianne. They make me love her in a way that I don't usually. And so I'm giving it to this Marianne because she made me love the character when I don't usually. For Lucy Steele, I'm giving it to the 2008 miniseries. Again, I think the miniseries gets a little bit extra play because it's a miniseries comparing it to the movies, but still, this Lucy, I think, is really well done. I don't like the Lucy in the 90s movie. I think she's a little too over the top and I don't know, not smarmy enough, if that makes sense. Like Lucy's supposed to be cunning, and that Lucy doesn't seem cunning. That Lucy just seems kind of silly. So I like the way that they play the Lucy in the 2008 miniseries better. And here's another Doctor Who character. And that might be why I chose her, but also because Anne Steele gets cut out of most adaptations, so she doesn't have a lot of competition. But in the 2008 miniseries, this Daisy Haggard plays Anne Steele, and she does a brilliant job of it. And she's also from a really good Doctor Who episode, and I like her there too. So she gets to win as the best Anne Steele. And of course, this is going to be an easy take, but the best Colonel Brandon ever is from the 1995 movie, Alan Rickman. He is the Colonel Brandon. Fight me. There is no other. He is Colonel Brandon and he's the best. Love him and love his performance there. All right, moving right along. We are on to Mansfield Park. These are the various options I have. I've got a mini series, two movies, and a YouTube series yet again from Mansfield with Love. It is also a really good version. I think honestly my favorite version of Mansfield Park that has ever been done is from Mansfield with Love. Highly recommend you take a look at it. Before we get into individual characters, I think Mansfield Park is a really hard one to adapt and to adapt well because it's so internal in this main character's head. And so both the main movie versions of this really tried to change who Fanny was to make it work. The 1999 movie really turned her into like Elizabeth Bennet pretending to be Fanny Price. Um, and yeah, I don't love that adaptation choice. So I think it's hard to adapt Fanny. I think she's hard to put on screen, but with Mansfield with Love really manages to do it. And that is why she is my favorite Fanny Price, Holly Trestlove. From with she's from Mansfield with Love, the YouTube series is the only Fanny Price I think in any adaptation I've ever seen that really gets it, that gets the adaptation piece of it correct. And so yeah, she has to win it by a mile as the only correct adaptation that has ever I've ever seen done. Because Fanny has always changed, and this adaptation actually gets her correct, and that's what makes it such a good adaptation of Mansfield Park, in my opinion. And I have to then do a worst for Billie Piper as Fanny Price. So here's another Doctor Who character or actress, not character. Um, she was obviously in Doctor Who, but in this case, I think she is the worst Fanny Price. No, like I was saying, all the adaptations change Fanny Price except for the From Mansfield with Love YouTube series. But the way they change it in this case, I don't know. Just Billie Piper as Fanny Price really rubs me the wrong way. There was something about the fact that she refused to put her hair up. I don't know if this is a real story, but it's in my head. Throughout the movie, she always wears her hair down. And a lot of other people, actors have really good, like, time period appropriate hair, and her hair is just never correct. And from what I'd heard, it was something along the lines of that she was such a big star, she didn't want to put her hair up. She didn't think she looked good with her hair up, so she refused. And so she had very modern hair throughout the whole thing, and that just really makes me dislike her. If that story is actually true, I hate that she did that. And it's not just the hair, but like having her whole thing with how she played Fanny Price is just, I don't know, made her seem not Fanny in a way that I really dislike. So I don't really like this movie as a whole, but I think a lot of that comes down to I don't like this Fanny. She did not do a good job, in my opinion. This is my least favorite. So this from the 2007 movie is the worst Fanny Price. And we're going back, then we've got Mariah from the 1999 movie. She's my favorite Mariah. I think she does an amazing job showing the jealousy and the hurt. And I love that in this version you see her at the end in her cottage with her aunt and the whole thing and how she kind of confronts her brother about what her choices and her affair with Henry Crawford and all of this. I think it's really well done. She does a really good job. I really love this Mariah. And that, my friends, is the end of the day. I'm going to end this screen with what you probably can already tell from a lot of these of my favorite versions of these different stories. My favorite Pride and Prejudice is, of course, the 1995 miniseries. My favorite Sense and Sensibility is also a miniseries. In general, I tend to like miniseries better than just the movies because you can really get into the details more. Um, Northanger Abbey, my favorite is the 2007 movie, but I will say that Kate Marlin Chronicles are a very strong contender. I also love that version. For Mansfield Park, the clear winner is From Mansfield with Love. It is the only real faithful adaptation I think that has ever been done, even though it's a modern adaptation, and I think it's fantastic. Love that one. Highly recommend. For Emma, it's the 2020 movie. It was so good. It is my favorite version of Emma that I've ever seen. Fantastic. And then for Persuasion, I'm going with Rational Creatures, another YouTube mini or video series that I think is really well done. It's another modern adaptation of Persuasion, and I think is again the best adaptation I've ever seen of Persuasion. I think it's perfect. A great way to update and get all these new information in. So with that, I would love to hear what you think of my opinions in the screen in the comments. If there's anything that you strongly agree with me or disagree with me about, if there are other adaptations that you think should have made the list that I didn't talk about or have anybody from, if I forgot something or don't know of one, please let me know. I would love to hear it. And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.